The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Buckingham Palace as Queen Camilla made her way to the East Wing. She had been feeling particularly frustrated lately. The press had been harsh about her recent public appearances, questioning her authority and suggesting she lacked the natural command that the late Queen Elizabeth had possessed. The criticism stung more than she cared to admit as she walked through the ornate hallways, her heels clicking against the marble floors. She couldn't shake the feeling that people were watching her differently. Even the palace staff seemed to treat her with less reverence than they had shown her predecessor. She was determined to change that perception today. The East Wing housed the quarters of the Queen's Guard, the elite soldiers responsible for protecting the royal family. These men were known for their discipline, their unwavering dedication, and their absolute respect for protocol. If anyone would show her the proper respect she deserved, it would be them. Queen Camilla had always admired the Queen's Guard from a distance. Their red tunics, black bearskin hats, and stoic expressions represented everything she loved about British tradition. They stood motionless for hours, never breaking character, never showing weakness. They were the embodiment of duty and honor. Today she had decided to visit them personally. It wasn't unusual for members of the royal family to inspect the guards, but Queen Camilla had never done it alone before. She wanted to establish her authority, to remind everyone, including herself, that she was now the queen consort and deserved the same respect that had been given to her husband's mother. As she approached the guard quarters, she could hear the sounds of preparation. Men were polishing their boots, adjusting their uniforms, and speaking in low, respectful tones. The moment they noticed her presence, a hush fell over the room. "Your Majesty," said Sergeant Major Thompson, stepping forward and bowing deeply. He was a man in his 40s with steel-gray eyes and a mustache that was perfectly trimmed according to military regulations. His uniform was immaculate, every button polished to a mirror shine. "Sergeant Major," Queen Camilla replied, trying to sound as regal as possible, "I've come to inspect the guard and ensure everything is in proper order." "Of course, Your Majesty." "The men are honored by your presence." Thompson's voice was respectful but professional. There was something in his tone that made Queen Camilla feel he was merely going through the motions of courtesy. She looked around the room at the dozen guards present. They all stood at attention, their eyes fixed straight ahead, their expressions unreadable. These were men who had served in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other dangerous places around the world. They had faced bullets and bombs with the same stoic courage they displayed now. "I want them to salute me," Queen Camilla announced suddenly. Sergeant Major Thompson looked slightly confused. "Your Majesty, the men can certainly provide a ceremonial salute if that's what you wish." "No," she said firmly, her voice growing stronger. "I want them to salute me the way they would salute the king, with the same respect, the same precision, the same dedication." There was a moment of uncomfortable silence. The guards remained perfectly still, but Queen Camilla could sense a shift in the atmosphere. Sergeant Major Thompson cleared his throat carefully. "Your Majesty, the men always show proper respect to all members of the royal family. However, the formal salute you're referring to is typically reserved for the sovereign, His Majesty the King." Queen Camilla felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger. Here it was again, the subtle reminder that she wasn't quite equal to her husband in the eyes of protocol. She had hoped that by becoming queen consort she would finally receive the full measure of respect she craved. "I am the queen," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I am married to your king, and I deserve the same honor." The guards remained motionless, but she could see slight movements in their eyes. They were trained not to react, but they were human beings, and human beings noticed everything. Sergeant Major Thompson was clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Your Majesty, perhaps we could arrange a special ceremony," he began. "No," she interrupted. "I want it now. I want them to salute me now, with full military honors." Thompson glanced at his men, then back at Queen Camilla. He was caught between his respect for the royal family and his duty to maintain proper military protocol. The queen consort was making a request that went against established tradition, but she was still royalty. "Very well, Your Majesty," he said finally. Men, present arms for Her Majesty the Queen Consort. The guards moved with precision, raising their rifles in a formal salute. Their movements were sharp and coordinated, exactly as they would be for any important ceremony. But Queen Camilla could sense something was missing. There was a mechanical quality to their actions, as if they were simply going through the motions. "Again," she commanded. "But this time, I want you to mean it." This request was even more unusual. Sergeant Major Thompson's eyebrows raised slightly, though he quickly composed himself. The guards looked at each other out of the corners of their eyes, maintaining their formal positions. "Your Majesty," Thompson said carefully. "The men always perform their duties with complete sincerity and dedication. Do they?" Queen Camilla challenged. "Because I don't feel it. I don't feel the same reverence I've seen them show my husband. I want them to salute me as if I were their commanding officer, as if their lives depended on showing me proper respect." The tension in the room was growing thicker. These were professional soldiers who had been trained to follow orders without question. But they were also men who understood the difference between duty and performance. Queen Camilla was asking them to manufacture an emotion, to pretend she held a position she didn't actually hold. One of the younger guards, Private Collins, shifted slightly on his feet. It was barely noticeable, but Queen Camilla caught the movement immediately. "You," she said, pointing at Collins. "Do you have something to say?" Collins was perhaps 22 years old. With bright blue eyes and the kind of fresh face that made it clear he was relatively new to the guard, he looked terrified at being singled out. "No, Your Majesty," he stammered. "Nothing at all, Your Majesty? Then why did you move?" I apologize, Your Majesty." It was involuntary. Queen Camilla studied the young man's face. She could see that he was genuinely nervous, but she could also see something else, a hint of confusion, maybe even disappointment. It was the same look she had been seeing in people's faces for months now, ever since she had become Queen Consort. "I want all of you to understand something," she said, addressing the entire room. "I am not just the king's wife. I am your queen. I have earned my place in this family, and I deserve the same respect that has been given to every queen before me." Sergeant Major Thompson stepped forward again. "Your Majesty, with the greatest respect, no one here questions your position or your worth. The men serve the crown with complete loyalty, and that includes their dedication to you." "But not their reverence," Queen Camilla said quietly. "Not their true respect." The words hung in the air like an accusation. The guards continued to stand at attention, but Queen Camilla could see that her statement had hit its mark. They were trying to hide their reactions, but she had spent years learning to read people's faces. And she could see the truth in their eyes. They respected her position, but they didn't respect her personally. They followed protocol when it came to her, but they didn't feel the same natural deference they showed King Charles. She was Queen Consort by marriage, not by birth or by earning their admiration through years of service. "I want you to salute me one more time," she said, her voice now carrying a note of desperation that she tried to hide. "But this time I want you to close your eyes first. I want you to imagine that I am someone you truly respect, someone you would follow into battle. Then open your eyes and salute me with that feeling in your hearts." The request was so unusual that even the disciplined guards couldn't hide their surprise completely. Sergeant Major Thompson looked as if he wanted to object, but Queen Camilla held up her hand to stop him. "Please," she said, "indulge me in this." The guards reluctantly closed their eyes. Queen Camilla watched their faces, hoping to see some transformation, some shift that would indicate they were truly trying to fulfill her request. She wanted so desperately to feel what Queen Elizabeth had felt, that automatic, unquestioned respect that came not from her title, but from who she was as a person. When they opened their eyes and performed the salute, it was technically perfect. Every movement was precise, every timing was exact. But Queen Camilla could still sense the same hollowness, the same mechanical compliance. "Thank you," she said quietly, though she felt more disappointed than ever. As she prepared to leave, she noticed that Private Collins was still looking uncomfortable. His face was red and he seemed to be struggling with something. "Collins," she said. "What is it?" The young man glanced at Sergeant Major Thompson, who gave him a slight nod of permission to speak. "Your Majesty," Collins began hesitantly, "may I ask you a question?" Queen Camilla was surprised by the request, but she nodded. "What made the late Queen so special to us?" Collins asked. "What made us respect her the way we did?" It was an innocent question asked by a young man who genuinely wanted tea. Queen Camilla stared at Private Collins for a long moment, his question hanging in the air between them. The young soldier had asked the one question she had been avoiding asking herself for months. What had made Queen Elizabeth so special? What had earned her the kind of automatic, heartfelt respect that Queen Camilla was now demanding? "She served," Queen Camilla said finally, her voice softer than it had been all morning. "For 70 years, she served this country without complaint." "Yes, Your Majesty," Collins replied respectfully. "But it was more than that, wasn't it?" Sergeant Major Thompson shot Collins a warning look, but Queen Camilla held up her hand again. She was curious now, despite herself. "What do you mean, Collins?" The young guard glanced around the room at his colleagues, then back at Queen Camilla. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the late Queen during the war, Your Majesty. How she refused to leave London during the bombing. How she learned to change truck tires and fix engines so she could help with the war effort. She didn't have to do any of those things." "No," Queen Camilla agreed quietly. "She didn't. And later," Collins continued, emboldened by her response, "when there were troubles in the family, when there were scandals and difficulties, she never complained publicly. She never demanded that people respect her. She just, kept doing her duty." The words hit Queen Camilla like a physical blow. The young soldier wasn't trying to be cruel, but his innocent observation cut straight to the heart of her problem. Queen Elizabeth had never demanded respect. She had earned it through decades of selfless service and quiet dignity. "Collins," Sergeant Major Thompson warned, his voice sharp. "It's all right, Sergeant Major," Queen Camilla said. She looked around the room at all the guards, seeing them with new eyes. These men had served in dangerous places, had risked their lives for their country. They understood sacrifice in a way that perhaps she never had. "Tell me," she said to the room in general, "what do you think of when you think of Queen Elizabeth?" There was an uncomfortable silence. The guards were trained not to speak out of turn, especially not to share personal opinions about members of the royal family. But Queen Camilla waited, and eventually one of the older guards spoke up. "Dignity, Your Majesty," said Corporal Davies, a man who looked to be in his 50s with graying temples. "Even in the worst times, she never lost her dignity." "What else?" Queen Camilla pressed. "Consistency," said another guard. "You always knew where you stood with her. She was the same person whether the cameras were rolling or not." "Humility," added Private Jenkins, a tall, thin man with kind eyes. "She never acted like she was better than anyone else, even though she was the queen." Queen Camilla felt each word like a small knife. She thought about her own behavior over the past months, the times she had lost her temper with staff, the moments when she had insisted on certain privileges, the occasions when she had complained about her treatment in the press. "And what do you think of me?" she asked quietly. The question created a tension so thick it was almost visible. The guards looked at each other, at Sergeant Major Thompson, anywhere but at Queen Camilla. This was exactly the kind of question they were trained never to answer honestly. "Your Majesty," Thompson began. "That's not inappropriate. I'm ordering you to answer," Queen Camilla said firmly. "All of you. I want complete honesty." The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Corporal Davies, the older guard who had spoken about dignity, cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, may I speak freely?" "Yes, you're trying very hard," Davies said carefully. "We can see that. You want to do well, and you want to be ... accepted. But?" Queen Camilla prompted. Davies hesitated, then continued. "But sometimes it feels like you're more concerned with how you're perceived than with the actual work of being queen." "Consort." The words stung because they contained a grain of truth that Queen Camilla recognized but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. She thought about the past few months, how much time she had spent reading newspaper articles about herself, How often she had complained to King Charles about her treatment. How frequently she had worried about her image. What else? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Private Collins, the young guard who had started this conversation, looked directly at her. Your Majesty, the late Queen never asked us to respect her. She just, was respectable. When she walked into a room, we felt it automatically. Not because we were supposed to, but because she had earned it over and over again. And I haven't, Queen Camilla said. It wasn't a question. You could, said Collins earnestly, but not by asking for it. Queen Camilla looked around the room at these men who had seen combat, who had served their country in the most dangerous circumstances, who understood better than most people what true leadership looked like. They weren't being cruel, they were being honest because she had commanded them to be. I see, she said quietly. And what would you suggest I do differently? Sergeant Major Thompson looked alarmed. Your Majesty, the men aren't qualified to give advice to. They're qualified to recognize leadership when they see it. Queen Camilla interrupted. They've served under good officers and bad ones. They know the difference. She turned back to the guards. Well? Corporal Davies spoke up again. Your Majesty, in the military we learn that you can't command respect. You can command obedience, but respect has to be earned through actions, not words. What kind of actions? Service, says Private Jenkins. Real service, not just showing up to events and cutting ribbons. Finding ways to make people's lives better, especially when no one is watching. Consistency, added another guard. Being the same person whether you're in public or private. And patience, said Collins. The late Queen spent 70 years proving herself. She didn't expect people to respect her just because she married into the family. Each word was like a revelation to Queen Camilla. She had been so focused on demanding the respect she thought she deserved that she had never stopped to consider whether she had actually earned it. She had been queen consort for less than 2 years, and she had spent most of that time worrying about her image rather than thinking about how she could serve others. I've been going about this all wrong, haven't I? She said, more to herself than to the guards. Your Majesty, Sergeant Major Thompson said gently, everyone finds their way eventually. The late Queen made mistakes too, especially in the early years. Did she? Queen Camilla asked, genuinely curious. Oh yes, Thompson replied. But she learned from them. And she never made the same mistake twice. Queen Camilla thought about this for a moment. She had been so busy comparing herself to Queen Elizabeth at her most confident and respected that she had forgotten the Queen had once been young and uncertain too. What was her worst mistake? She asked. Thompson considered the question carefully. I think it was when she initially handled the situation with Princess Diana's death. The public wanted to see her grieving publicly, but she was focused on protecting her grandsons privately. She was doing the right thing for the right reasons, but she didn't understand how it looked to the people. How did she fix it? She listened, Thompson said simply. She heard what people were saying, even when it was critical, and she adjusted her approach. She gave that speech about Diana as she started to find ways to show her humanity without losing her dignity. Queen Camilla felt something shift inside her. For months, she had been defensive about criticism, dismissing it as unfair or biased. But what if some of it was valid? What if there were things she could learn from it? Things she could change? I want to ask you all something, she said, looking around the room. If you could change one thing about how I carry out my duties as queen consort, what would it be? The guards looked uncomfortable again, but Queen Camilla waited patiently. Finally, Private Collins spoke up. Your Majesty, sometimes when we see you at public events, it looks like you're more focused on the cameras than on the people you're meeting. You think I'm being fake? Not fake exactly, Collins said carefully. But performative, like you're acting the part of being queen consort rather than just being it. The observation was painfully accurate. Queen Camilla thought about the last charity event she had attended. How she had spent more time making sure the photographers got good shots than she had talking to the volunteers who were doing the actual work. What else? She asked. Your Majesty, said Corporal Davies, you seem to worry a lot about what people think of you. The late queen never seemed to care about that. She just did what she thought was right. But she must have cared somewhat, Queen Camilla protested. Everyone cares what people think. Maybe she did, Davies conceded. But she never let it show. And she never let it change what she did. You can tell when someone is more concerned with their image than with their work. Queen Camilla felt a flush of embarrassment. Was she really that transparent? Had everyone been able to see through her attempts to manage her public perception? I've been trying so hard to prove myself, she said quietly. I wanted people to accept me, to see me as legitimate. Your Majesty, Thompson said gently, you are legitimate. You're married to the king and you're the queen consort. No one can change that. But you can't force people to feel about you the way they felt about someone who served for 70 years. So what do I do? Queen Camilla stood in silence for several minutes, processing everything the guards had told her. The weight of their honesty settled on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. She had come here demanding respect, and instead, she had received something far more valuable, the truth about herself. I owe you all an apology, she said finally, her voice quiet but clear. I came here today demanding something that cannot be demanded. I asked you to manufacture feelings that can only be earned through time and service. The guards remained at attention, but she could see subtle changes in their expressions. There was less tension now, less discomfort. Her admission had shifted the atmosphere in the room. More than that, she continued, I realize that I've been so focused on how I'm perceived that I've lost sight of why this position exists in the first place. It's not about me. It's about service to the people of this country. Sergeant Major Thompson relaxed slightly. Your Majesty, we all need guidance sometimes. Even the late Queen had advisors. Yes, but she listened to them, Queen Camilla said with a rueful smile. I've been so busy defending myself against criticism that I haven't been listening to the wisdom of people who understand duty better than I do. She looked around the room at each guard individually. These men had risked their lives in foreign countries, had stood in the rain and snow for hours without complaint, had dedicated themselves to something larger than their own comfort or recognition. They understood sacrifice in a way she was only beginning to grasp. Collins, she said, addressing the young guard who had been so honest with her, you asked me what made Queen Elizabeth special. I think I was wrong before. It wasn't just that she served, it was that she served without expecting anything in return. She didn't serve to be loved or respected. She served because it was right. Yes, Your Majesty, Collins replied. And people loved and respected her because of that, not in spite of it. Queen Camilla felt a deep flush of shame as she thought about her behavior over the past months. How many times had she complained to King Charles about not receiving enough recognition? How many staff meetings had focused on managing her image rather than planning meaningful work? How many opportunities to genuinely serve others had she missed because she was too concerned with how she appeared? I want to tell you all something, she said, her voice growing stronger with resolve. When I married the then Prince Charles, I knew I would face scrutiny. I knew people would compare me to his first wife, to his mother, to every woman who had held royal positions before me. But instead of focusing on proving myself through service, I became defensive. I became more concerned with what people thought of me than with what I could do for them. The honesty in her voice was unmistakable. The guards could hear the difference between this admission and the performative requests she had made earlier. This was real. The truth is, she continued, I've been jealous. Jealous of the automatic respect Queen Elizabeth received. Jealous of the way people's faces lit up when they saw her. Jealous of the love the British people had for her. And instead of asking myself how she earned those things, I convinced myself that I deserved them simply by virtue of my title. Corporal Davies spoke up carefully. Your Majesty, it's natural to want to be appreciated for your work. Is it work, though? Queen Camilla asked. Or has it been performance? Because looking back honestly, I think too much of what I've done has been about managing my image rather than genuinely serving others. The question hung in the air. It was a level of self-reflection that none of the guards had expected from a member of the royal family. and it commanded a different kind of respect than any salute could have provided. "I remember," Queen Camilla said, her voice growing distant as she recalled a specific memory. "There was a visit to a children's hospital last month. I spent more time making sure the photographers captured me at the right angles than I did talking to the sick children. There was one little girl, maybe 6 years old, who kept trying to show me a drawing she had made. But I was distracted, worried about how I looked, worried about what the headlines would say the next day." She paused, the shame of the memory clearly visible on her face. "I barely glanced at her drawing. I gave her a quick smile and moved on to the next photo opportunity. And later, I found out she had spent days working on that drawing because she heard the Queen Consort was coming to visit." The guards listened in complete silence. This was not the conversation any of them had expected to have today. "That little girl deserved my full attention," Queen Camilla continued, her voice thick with regret. "She deserved to have someone genuinely interested in her art, someone who cared more about her feelings than about newspaper coverage. But I failed her because I was too busy trying to look like a queen instead of being one." Private Jenkins shifted slightly. "Your Majesty, everyone makes mistakes? Do they?" Queen Camilla asked. "Because I keep making the same ones over and over again. How many people have I disappointed because I was more concerned with appearances than with genuine connection? How many opportunities have I wasted to actually make a difference in someone's life?" She thought about other recent events, charity galas where she had spent more time networking with wealthy donors than talking to the beneficiaries, community visits where she had rushed through meetings to stay on schedule, public appearances where her focus had been on saying the right things rather than meaning them. "I came here today demanding that you salute me with feeling," she said, the full weight of her shame finally settling in. "But I've never given you any reason to feel that way about me. I've never shown you the kind of selfless dedication that would inspire genuine respect. I've been trying to take something I haven't earned." Sergeant Major Thompson stepped forward slightly. "Your Majesty, recognizing the problem is the first step toward solving it. Is it solvable?" she asked, and for the first time since entering the room, she sounded vulnerable rather than demanding. "Your Majesty," Corporal Davies said respectfully, "you're still relatively new to this role. The late Queen had 70 years to build her reputation. You've had less than 2. There's still time." "But I have to actually change," Queen Camilla said. "Not just my image or my public relations strategy. I have to change how I think about this position and what it means to serve." "Yes," Collins said simply. "You do." The blunt honesty might have offended her earlier in the day, but now it felt like exactly what she needed to hear. "I want to make you a promise," she said, looking around the room at each guard. "From now on, I'm going to focus on service, not recognition. I'm going to stop worrying about whether people respect me and start thinking about whether I'm worthy of respect. And I'm going to listen to criticism instead of defending against it." She paused, then continued with a slight smile. "And I'm never going to demand a salute again. If I ever earn one from you, a real one, given freely because you believe I've proven myself, then I'll know I've finally understood what this job is really about." The guards remained at attention, but Queen Camilla could see something different in their faces now. Not respect, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. She had shown them something real, something vulnerable and honest that went beyond royal protocol. "Thank you," she said quietly. "All of you. You've given me something I couldn't get from advisors or public relations experts or newspaper articles. You've given me perspective." As she turned to leave, Private Collins spoke up one final time. "Your Majesty?" "Yes, Collins?" "The little girl with the drawing, what was it a picture of?" Queen Camilla stopped walking, her back still to the guards. When she answered, her voice was barely audible. "I don't know. I never looked closely enough to see." The admission hung in the air as she walked out of the room. It was perhaps the most honest thing she had said all day, and it encapsulated everything that needed to change about how she approached her role. Later that evening, Queen Camilla sat in her private study, staring at her schedule for the upcoming weeks. Instead of focusing on which events would generate positive coverage, she found herself thinking about the people she would meet. Instead of worrying about her appearance, she thought about what she could actually do to help. She picked up her phone and called her private secretary. "Margaret? I want you to find out the name of the little girl I met at the children's hospital last month. The one with the drawing. I'd like to arrange another visit, a private one with no photographers. And this time, I want to see her artwork properly." It was a small step, but it was a beginning. And for the first time in months, Queen Camilla felt like she was moving in the right direction, not toward the respect she had demanded, but toward the respect she might someday earn.